James Corbett on, not only because I saw excellent analysis he was putting out, and the 9 other times, he's been killed, or the 8 other, now making this 9, but also he's in Japan, and he can report on the rising radiation levels there. James Corbett is edited and webmastered the Corbett Report. He also has a new book coming out, Reportage, Essays on the New World Order, CorbettReport.com, and he joins us from Japan. It's great to have you on, James. Give us your breakdown on this Jerry Bruckheimer scripted situation.
Well, thank you for having me on today. And every bit of that dread that you were talking about earlier that you feel is what I'm feeling right now. And that's why I was up until 3 or 4 in the morning last night as well. And I'm up at it again tonight because I absolutely see the shift that's going on here. And I think what we've seen is really they're discarding the Trump card in the war on terror because that Trump card is no longer usable. And so they've jettisoned their old CIA asset who wasn't really working as their boogeyman anymore. And they're taking this game to a completely different level. And I can't help but think that that means that there is some tectonic shifts coming up. And I've been talking for some time now. I talked about on your program a couple of months ago about how this really represents the beginning pre-stages of a lead up to World War III and a confrontation in the long run with China. And I think this is another part on that road. And I think obviously they're setting up Pakistan for some major military action in the very near future. And we know that just 6 days before they rolled out this corpse to tell us that Osama is dead, we know that just 6 days before the WikiLeaks false flag operation released those documents from Guantanamo, which said that, of course, they've got nukes planted all over Europe and they're going to unleash them if Osama ever dies. So I don't take that as a threat from the shadowy, mythical al-Qaeda terrorist organization. I take that as a threat from the real terrorists who are, of course, puppeteering those patsies and stooges.
Now, when I mentioned Jerry Bruckheimer, for folks that doubt this, with the private Jessica Lynch story, if we remember, at the time I watched the video and I said, this is all scripted. And then I looked at maps of where U.S. forces were. They had controlled that area for at least 3 days when Jessica Lynch was, quote, rescued. And they kicked in doors, beat people up. She was hiding, under the hospital bed when they got there. And they told her, we're now going to tell you, and Jerry Bruckheimer, and the BBC reported it, had written the story, that the men wouldn't fight, but she climbed up with a 50 cal on the top and killed dozens of them. And people are like, man, this is good for women in the military. And it turned out it was an Army psyop to sell women in the military. It turns out she hid in the back of the vehicle cowering. And later she had to go public. She said, no, it's not true. It was actually several Hispanic members of the team. They ambushed and killed a bunch of folks. I forget their names, but 2 Hispanic members of the team. And it was just a supply detail. They fought off the Iraqi forces. And then 5 of the team that started saying it wasn't true, they were all killed. They were drowned. They died in car wrecks in Phoenix, Arizona. They were in a nice neighborhood having a barbecue party for one of them, and a guy in a black uniform and a mask popped up, double tapped him in the head, total black op, because they didn't want that story coming out. This was all a black op. We've got, of course, don't forget the NFL player who went over there, and he wrote letters home, Pat Tillman's, and saying this is all made up. I'm going to come back and expose it, the drug dealing, all of it. This war is fake. And they just said, look, you were a big recruiting tool. You die. And they shot him a bunch, people, black ops in his unit. They walked up on him. The Army coroners went public with this. He obviously was begging, and they just triple tapped right in the head. You're going to go tell people about the drugs? Die, sucker! You're fragged! Ugh, New World Order. So the point is, Bruckheimer scripted the whole private Lynch thing. She'd been there for 3 days. The Iraqis went to the U.S. forces who'd taken over and said, she's here, come get her. They knew no Iraqi government was there. For 3 days, Bruckheimer got the whole event ready, scripted it, how she was the hero. And Corbett, I know I'm ranting. This is so important.
Well, it is important, and you bring out some good points earlier about the psyop that they staged with the phony flash mob with those poor fluoride-addled college kids. And I think a lot of people that I've talked to have said, well, wow, that looks exactly like what they were showing on 9/11 with the Arabs partying in the streets. And I think that to me is part of this media psyop, because it seems like it's designed to give that reaction, so that they're in a way showing, the Americans are exactly what they were fighting against. And I think that's again part of this whole psyop that's going on right now.
Well, you're absolutely right. When we come back, I want to get your rundown of what's fishy in the story, in the photos, with Bin Laden supposedly being dead, and the larger geopolitical ramifications. But in the minute and a half before break, I saw you on RT really rattle off a cornucopia of the history and why you question this.
Right. Well, because as I pointed out in my article yesterday, and you put up on your site, they have now announced Osama's death on about eight or nine different occasions now that I've been able to count, and that was just a quick count. But going back to President Musharraf and the Afghan Taliban and the FBI counterterror chief Dale Watson and the current president of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto, again and again, over and over for the past 9 years, they've talked about how he's probably dead, he's gone. We got word he died in the Pakistan earthquake in 2005, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't see any reason to take this one any more seriously until they release something resembling evidence of that Osama bin Laden actually died. But again, I think to a certain extent that's a distraction, because the real issue here is the geopolitical moves that they're going to be making based on this orchestrated psyop.
And that's what's giving me chills. We'll talk about the larger geopolitical when we come back. But remember, these are folks that murdered Pat Tillman, and the Army coroner, the doctor, wouldn't lie. He said he was shot at far range. Later, the witnesses admitted the truth. They shot him. He begged for help. They went up to help him, and then they shot him from 3 feet. Powder burns, spaced right in his eyes. Shot him right in the face with a 3 burst from an M16, and then they told you Al-Qaeda killed him. Finishing up on the geopolitical ramifications of this, the public not buying it, the news is the dinosaur media panicking, and then a quick report. Maybe I'll hold you over and just keep our next guest till maybe 35 after or so. Some news on what's happening with the radiation-stricken Japan and the clouds settling in over the U.S.
All right. Well, on the geopolitical note, I think it's extremely important to understand that Pakistan is being set up here, and the fact that Osama bin Laden was supposedly found just down the street from the Pakistan Military Academy, that is not by accident. There's clearly an attempt to coordinate something that will look very much will implicate the Pakistani military establishment in this. So, in order to justify the further incursion into Pakistan, and we know that, of course, the drones have been dropping bombs on Pakistan for some time now. So that's not necessarily a market shift in strategy. It's just sort of like the Gulf of Tonkin sort of made the Vietnam War into an official war instead of what it was before. So in the exact same way, they're just going to try to up the ante here and escalate what's already going on. But this is a very disturbing move because, of course, we see Pakistan and China with their close alliance that may even become closer, of course, if they're threatened by U.S. aggression. So there's a very, very volatile situation developing here, and this only plays even further into what's already sweeping through the Middle East, of course, and with Syria looking up until this point, at any rate, like it was the next in the crosshairs. Maybe there's been a bit of a change now, but all of this is very disturbing, and of course, it's all predicated on the mythical phony war on terror with the phony boogeyman Al-Qaeda, which is okay in Libya, but is the enemy in Afghanistan, apparently.
Well, they always launch new wars with a big hyped PR event. You can see all the scripting, not just all the lies they've been caught in. And notice in the last few months, we've told folks, Pakistan's next, Pakistan's next. They're positioning all of this because Saudi Arabia knows they're being double-crossed and have run to Pakistan for nuclear protection. This is spiraling out of control. World War III, a hot war, folks, is right now on the table. The globalists are seriously considering it. But we go back to 2007, Admiral Fox Fallon, the head of CENTCOM, was ordered to launch the attack on Iran. That later came out, and he said no, gave an interview, and then resigned. Then Cheney tried to stage the attacks on the ships. That even came out in New Yorker magazine. with Iranian ships, U.S. ships painted up like Iranians, but that didn't work. I mean, we are on the razor's edge right now, James. This is real.
This is incredibly real, and I mean, all of the different aspects of the way that this Osama Bin Laden Psyop plays into their hands is mind-boggling. I mean, not only the fact we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, thereby completely undercutting all of the momentum that was going into that for relaunching an investigation into 9/11. All of that undermined as now the official story gets tied up in a nice pink little bow with everybody cheering and waving the American flag, and it also plays into the ongoing war. It plays into the distraction from the economy, which I think is a point that Rand Paul was making earlier on Judge Napolitano. It plays into their hands in so many different ways, and of course, then it just helps to discard one of their old boogeymen that wasn't really doing what they wanted. But I personally, I think World War III, if it is to be a hot war, will not get started without some sort of nuclear false flag, and that's what I'm worried about right now, especially given that they were just 5 days ago releasing these leaked documents that supposedly indicate they have hundreds of nukes, buried all over Europe or whatever they're trying to.
Right, James. You've just hit the key here. You can always tell what they're going to do or are thinking about doing by the preparatory phase. And it's nukes out of Pakistan in America. They're going to hit America or Europe. All of it scripted, all of it building up. Then the CIA agent caught with the uranium. I mean, this all happened. I mean, here's CNN. And first he said, oh, he's not CIA, and then later they had to admit he was. The point is, this is all converging, this is all moving, and you notice it's happening as the dollar is plunging. This is just unspeakable.
It is unspeakable, and unfortunately, I can only see things escalating from here. I don't know if there's a way for them to back out of this at this point, because they're going on this momentum right now, and we are seeing such incredible movements geopolitically right now that I think to a certain extent this is also a diversionary tactic, because we know that the economy is collapsing and they need a boogeyman to blame it on, and they're going to use this.
Let's finish up with more of the anomalies, and then the clear scripting of all this and all the things they now have had to admit weren't true, even inside their official fable. And then let's talk a little bit about Fukushima. You're there in Japan. James Corbett's our guest. Then we're going to talk to another important guest as well. Ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds?